In this short video, I'll show you how you can automate general ledger or balance sheet reconciliations directly in SAP. The tool that we're going to use is an SAP certified add-on module from BEST, which is an SAP development partner. We're going to start with some very quick slides to put you in the picture, and then we'll go into SAP itself and look at the GL reconciliations. So within the standard SAP suite, there is no general ledger or balance sheet reconciliation functionality, and it means that SAP users need to reconcile outside of SAP. Here are some examples of the kinds of reconciliations that accountants are doing during the month-end close period. Accruals for general ledger postings not yet made in SAP, but that should, however, be included in the financials. For example, missing vendor invoices, interest on loans, taxes not yet paid, payroll expenses not yet paid, revenue not yet billed, already earned. And all these accrual accounts need reconciliation to ensure they're correct and complete. Bank accounts, a big reconciliation. We need to reconcile that the bank balance inside SAP is the same as the bank statement balance, so the actual physical bank statement balance. And we also need to reconcile the open items in the SAP bank sub-accounts that should be cleared or reviewed. Intercompany reconciliation is often one of the biggest pain points. And these are required where you're internally trading within your organization to ensure that you're making the postings on both sides. Whether the intercompany is between companies or say within the same company code but between profit centers or simply between an internal customer and an internal vendor. And while SAP already has standard reports and mechanisms to keep the various sub-ledgers aligned to the general ledger, such as fixed assets, customers, vendors, and stock, further reconciliations are often required and done. For example, fixed assets to check and compare depreciation, postings, book values, etc. And these are required to be cut by transaction type or segment or profit center, for example, many other ways. And organizations are doing reconciliations at month end of other accounts, mainly balance sheet accounts, but can also be income statement accounts. So how are these reconciliations done outside of SAP? Mainly by downloading SAP transactions to Excel, for example, which requires manual categorization of transactions, manual checking and balancing. And reporting on the number of reconciliations done and progress made during month end is also highly manual. Supporting documentation such as bank statements needs to be filed outside of SAP. Reviews or approvals of reconciliations are not recorded in SAP or recorded somewhere outside of SAP. And finally, the financial data that has been extracted from SAP is now not controlled by the SAP authorizations and access control mechanisms. Okay, so BEST therefore provides an add-on module inside SAP to automate general ledger reconciliations. We're going to see that there are new reconciliation transactions and reports in SAP, and all of these are controlled by the existing SAP authorizations mechanism. After this slide, we'll go and look at the transactions, and we'll follow the flow in the diagram here. The Recon Hub allows reporting month-end reconciliation progress and anomalies for a range of accounts or across a range of companies or the entire organization. We'll look at some examples of reconciliation reports that have been automatically generated within the system. We'll look at how approvals for some accounts can be automated with no human intervention, and how for other accounts the approval is performed and controlled within SAP. And overall, we'll look at audit trails of approvals and reconciliations done and management reporting of the process. Right, so here we are inside SAP. The SAP users out there will recognize these screens. And because we've got the BEST add-on solution added to our SAP system, we've got some additional menu items there for the different BEST modules. The one we're interested in now is the general ledger or balance sheet reconciliations. So let's go into that. Right, so here's the main menu for the general ledger reconciliations, and there are a whole lot of reports and transactions, and we're going to go into some of those. There's also master data to support the whole process and allow you to set different custom settings. For example, you could set Some GL accounts must be reconciled before others as a prerequisite. And then there are configurable options, which are options that would be transported through the SAP landscape like normal SAP configurable options. For example, approval of the reconciliations. You can set quite a lot of controls here. You can set, for example, that a single user can't both do level 1 and level 2, for example. You can set that the system can auto-approve certain GL accounts, which saves a lot of time, people having to check those accounts, but it needs to check that certain situations are in place. For example, there's no movement on that account in the period under review, or it's currently got a zero balance, or it's a low-risk item. And you can set various messages that the system's going to send on rejection or approval. You can set, for example, that substantiating documentation, for example, the bank statement, must be attached to this reconciliation. So there's quite a lot of settings here that you can apply to customize the whole system for your requirements. Okay, so let's go into an end-to-end report, the GL Reconciliation Hub. I want to see how we are doing in our month end so far. How are we doing with our reconciliations? So I've selected a range of GL accounts, half a dozen company codes. I'm looking at the month of February 2019. It's a little bit in the past at the moment, but we've got a lot of data on there that I can show you some good stuff with. So let's go and have a look. Okay, so for that month of February, I'm expecting to do 513 reconciliations according to my selections and my master data settings. Of those, 20 have been approved by the reviewers. 13 have been approved by the preparers. And we've got 480 that haven't been looked at all yet. So let's go into that, and you can see it, those 480 split by my various company codes. I'm going to go into this company code 100, and now I can see within that the various accounting clerks that are responsible for those accounts and how many they've each still got to check and review. Let's go into the top one, Andre Buerta. Now we can see a lot of information, the account number, the account name. I can drill into the reconciliation report, which would be automatically available, and we're going to go into that after this and look at a few different types of reconciliations. Over here, these red fields are telling me that this reconciliation was due on the 3rd of March, which is 3 days into March, as per the setting for that reconciliation, and it's late, which is why it's highlighted in red. Okay, it hasn't been done yet. Over here, it's warning me that the financial period is still open for this GL account. Now, you've got two options here. Either you can set the system to insist that the period is closed before you do a reconciliation, and most people do that, so they're not chasing a moving target. But in some cases, it's very tight in the month-end period, and you have to do the reconciliation while the period is still open. In that case, if you complete your reconciliation and more transactions are posted against that account in the period, the system will automatically reject the reconciliation, send you an email telling you it's been rejected, that you need to reapprove it, recheck it, and it'll list the new transactions that have been posted. Okay, this one's got a cross there because the approval hasn't been done yet. I can click onto that icon and approve, but we'll have a look at that just now. You can set reconciliation instructions as master data. So here I've done it as an attachment, and you can attach various documents here. And this is very handy if you've got a shared service center and different people are doing the reconciliations from month to month. So you set some instructions here, and we've really typed a long story of instructions that you need to do to reconcile this account. And similarly, you don't need to do attachments. You could just write text, long text in there. You can set various risk categories against your accounts, critical, high, medium, low, and the system will react differently. So, for example, critical accounts, you could set that the system would never auto-approve that. It does require a pair of human eyes on it. You can set that accounts should be reconciled with different frequencies. So, for example, I've got in my system monthly, quarterly, biannual, and annual, just so that every month I don't select all the accounts for approval, only those that are required for that month. Okay, and you can set that certain accounts must be approved or not approved. For example, in general, balance sheet accounts should be approved, but income statement accounts don't require approval, but there can be exceptions to that. And you can also set various tolerances at the recon level. So, for example, to compare the balance for this month against the balance for a previous month, or to check that certain documents aren't posted onto the recon above a certain value, and if they are, to highlight those to the reviewers. Okay, and on the subject of checking, system automated checks, let's just go and have a look at a few of the automated checks that can be done. Okay, so here I've got at the top here a recon account that's been reconciled against various sub-levels, which could be a profit center level, for example, and whether or not auto-approval would be allowed for these accounts. So where it's green, it's passed the check, and auto-approval would be allowed because it passed that a check. So, for example, the ones in green here, there's a tolerance being set that, for example, the balance of the account for this month should not be more than 20% different from the previous month. And these accounts have not exceeded the tolerance. These ones in red have exceeded it, so they would require some human approval or review. Here's another check where we check if the opening balance of the period under review equals the closing balance, and if it's green it can auto-approve, red it can't. Another check is if the current closing balance is 0, in which case it can auto-approve, red it can't, or if there have actually been any postings at all in the period, which is a bit of a tighter check because you may have had a posting that was reversed and the balance is 0, but you still want to check that posting and reversal. Okay, great. So that's an overview, the hub, in which I can report many things across the entire organization and just see where I'm standing with my reconciliation process. Okay, so let me show you some example reconciliations. On the left is our table that we looked at before of example reconciliation types that the accountants are doing during the month end. And I'll show you some of those. And the point being that all these reconciliations are produced automatically by SAP now. And each type of reconciliation will have different logic, layouts, and categorization. For example, an accrual recon is quite different to a bank recon. And the underlying SAP functionality is also different, and the system reacts to that to produce different types of reconciliations. Of course, the system produces standard reconciliations, but they can also be customized. The categories can be changed and reordered and relaid out according to your specific requirements. And you can view the reconciliations in many different formats. PDF and Excel is good for non-SAP users, perhaps process owners who don't go into SAP. But SAP, the actual recon reports in SAP are the best. They're the most powerful because you can drill down to the rest of SAP to investigate things, look at the documents, change the layouts and fields as you need, write texts, attach reason codes, or attach substantiating documents like PDF, bank statements, etc. Okay, so let's have a look at a few examples. I'm going to start with some PDFs because that often rings true for high-level process owners. So here's an example of an accrual report. Again, this can be laid out according to your requirements. We've got our logo, that would be your logo, and laid out according to your requirements. I can see who's prepared this recon to date, and no one has reviewed it yet. And the first page is a summary of the category totals. Now, these are sort of typical categories for an accrual reconciliation. Other reconciliations you'll see have different categories. So what we're doing here is we've started with the previous period balance, and we end up with the closing balance for this period. And items from the previous period, they've been automatically categorized by the system. First of all, items cleared during the reconciliation period. That's good. We're very happy with that because accruals should generally be cleared. The previous month's items should be cleared. These items not cleared, these two categories, they may be of concern. The first one, a reversal has been scheduled within SAP itself, so that's promising. That reversal must just actually be carried out. The other one's simply not cleared. That needs investigation, the items in those category. And then items posted in the current month, those same sort of categorizations. Another one there, created later. If that was sort of posted in the next month, there may be an excuse as to why that hasn't been cleared yet. And then the subsequent pages would be the detailed items that make up each category. And again, you can show what columns and fields you'd like to show here. All right, let's look at a different type of reconciliation. This is a bank reconciliation. And this one looks heavily at the underlying SAP functionality. And it's in two parts. The first part is checking the bank balance. Does the bank balance in SAP equal the external bank statement balance? So here you can see there's the bank balance of the main account in SAP. We've loaded statements into SAP, and it's comparing the latest statement balance that it's got in SAP. And then again, we can enter the external bank statement balance, and it's checking that all three of those are the same. So that's the first part of it. And then the second part of it is all the open items from the bank statement that haven't yet been cleared in SAP. And for the SAP users out there, you'll know that those are the sub-accounts linked to this main bank account, so the system understands that. They're all linked together in this recon. And it'll report the totals of those open items there. And then the following pages would be the breakdown, the detailed open items that make up each of the sub-accounts. Okay, and let's have a look at another completely different reconciliation. This is a fixed asset, and I'm looking at, in this case, I've decided to report the asset class of leasehold improvements altogether. And again, I start with my previous period balance, and then end up with the closing balance of this period. And I add my acquisitions, subtract my retirements, subtract my transfers, subtract my depreciation to get the closing book balance, if you like. That's how, those high-level categories that I've selected to display this recon at. You can show them at a lower level using the standard SAP categorizations of transaction type, etc. So now looking at the reconciliation reports inside SAP itself, let's look at that same accrual report that we had looked at on the PDF. It's showing the same information, just now categorized within SAP. I like to show my recons subtotaled by category first, just to get a high-level picture. But you can display the details first. And then I drill down. And here now I can see the details. And the nice thing about being inside SAP is that's the SAP document of the item that's on the recon report, and I can drill into it. And you'll recognize that as a standard SAP document. I can have a look and see, who created this when, or whatever else I'd like to do within here. And you can see there, I've also maintained some text, so you can write as much free format text as you like, or you can maintain reason codes. And you can do this throughout the system. So, for example, when you're approving, you can maintain text and reason codes and attach things. Okay, let's now take a look at a completely new report that we haven't looked at, which is an intercompany recon. The first thing is, how does the system know what the relationship is? And there's a couple of ways. The first way is, if you are doing intercompany journals within SAP, and you've set up this standard SAP configuration with the relationships between the two intercompany parties, so either GL accounts in separate companies or a customer and vendor, and you've maintained this, the system will look at this table and link them together and perform the reconciliation. If you haven't, there's a similar table within BEST that you can maintain to map the companies and customers and vendors, etc., and profit centers to each other so that the system knows. So let's take a look at one. I've got an example here. Okay, so that's now a recon report where we've maintained in BEST a relationship between in company 100, there's that customer, and in company 101, there's that vendor, and we've linked them together in BEST so they can be reported in the same reconciliation report. The good news is the balance is 0, so it means we've posted the transactions on both sides. But you can see there's 2 open transactions on each side. So in that customer and in that vendor, there are 2 open transactions. So that's probably fine because they balance each other out, and we can see, it was an invoice on the one side from the customer, an invoice on the other side from the vendor. And again, I can drill into them and investigate if I want, etc. And now, ideally, these 2 items should be cleared. And either you would clear them using intercompany clearing within SAP, or you could use our BEST GL clearing module to automate that clearing. Or perhaps these items aren't going to be cleared as an intercompany clearing. They're actually going to be paid in the one company and receive the payment in the other company. So there's a nice example of an intercompany reconciliation report. Now, we've been looking at reconciliations for one GL account at a time or one relationship at a time. We might want to use the same transaction to look across a whole host of accounts, across a whole host of company codes, maybe the whole system. And now I'm trying to do some management reporting. So I've got a lot of GLs in here, a lot of items, all their categories, and now I've aged it. So perhaps you're looking for the items that are getting old. Okay, in our system here, there's a lot of 210 plus, but if you saw anything in sort of that range, you'd maybe investigate it. So for example, if I want to look at that first category, I can drill down and I can see all the GL accounts involved there, their subtotals, and maybe I'll drill down further and I can see the actual items that are involved there. And then I could drill into the actual SAP document and have a look. So different ways to look at the recon report, and some powerful subtotaling and aging functionality to get some good management reporting there. Okay, to finish off, I'm going to show you some approvals, and then that's enough to keep this video reasonably short. The first thing is the system can auto-approve, which is very handy and saves a lot of time. If there are accounts that meet certain criteria, the system will check for these criteria and automatically approve it, and it saves people having to review those accounts. So I've selected a whole range of accounts there for automatic approval. And usually this would run in the background. I'm running it in the foreground so you can see what's happening. Okay. Now, the lines with the green ticks and shaded in green, those have been automatically approved by the system. The lines in red cannot be automatically approved because they failed one of the automatic approval checks. And over here, there's a line item that exceeds a tolerance. So we've set a tolerance, for example, doc type SA journals above a value of 100,000 would exceed the tolerance. So therefore, no approval is allowed for those lines. And there can be other checks that the system does. For example, there should be no items posted on an account in a month for an auto approval to take place. And those checks you can set yourself, those rules you can set yourself. Right, so now for those items that the system can't auto-approve, and you want personnel to approve them, you attach an approval strategy with who must approve what, according to the normal SAP authorizations concept. And now for my user, that's the list of GL accounts that are waiting my approval. Okay, you can see the GL account numbers and names. I can click into the recon report and have a look at that. And we've had a look at some recon reports. And you'll see here, in some cases I'm the preparer, some cases I'm the reviewer, because I've got authorization for a wide range of things in our test system. Generally, a user would be either a preparer or a reviewer. And I can write approval text. I can put reason codes as in other places in the system. And if I'm happy, I can approve. Okay. If I want to reject something, I can reject. In the case of rejections, the previous approver is sent an email by the system because they might not be expecting it to be rejected. And now I can also do attachments as in other places in the system. One quite neat thing is you don't just need to attach external documents from your file system on your laptop or PC. You can also attach directly SAP transactions. So, for example, if I've got a standard SAP transaction that proves that the total of my materials in my materials management module, my MM module, equals the total of my stock GL account within the FI General Ledger of SAP. Okay, and in this report they do, and you can see the variance is 0. That's a standard SAP report. What I can do is I don't need to send this, save this. I can just send it to the spool. And when I go back into my approval transaction, I can check the spools that I've created. And I can attach that. And there's that report output that we saw, which would be attached as supporting and substantiating evidence for this reconciliation. Okay, so now we've seen the actual approval transaction. We can do some reporting on that transaction. Because it's in SAP, the system's keeping an audit trail of all the approvals and rejections that are done. So, I can check all the accounts done for the month of January, which users approved them at what level, the date and time that these were approved. And this opens us up for many things. So I could say, for example, a single GL account where there have been some problems over the last year, who's been reviewing and approving this account. So the full audit trail is there for me. And I can also go further and start looking at how am I doing according to my deadlines that I'm setting in my month-end processing. Have I been meeting the deadlines? So this first column here, the green flag is where we have been meeting the deadlines. And the red flag, the red icon, the red is where we haven't been meeting our deadlines. So if I drill down here and I see, okay, in these 71 cases, why haven't I met my deadlines? Well, the due date, according to my master data, was the 3rd of August, and I actually only approved this on the 13th of August. So therefore, it's classed me as late. And that just enables me to improve the general processing and report on it each month. So thank you for taking the time to watch and listen to this. If you'd like further details, there's our website address, or you can email us directly at that email address. Thanks very much, and goodbye.